change it? Not once more. Oh, I have the barcode. You don't have, I mean, the book's not on, oh yeah. Okay, no, I had read right before I came, so not as worried about that. And this is on right away?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, everyone, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salam ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala, amma ba'd. I want to apologize, my car did not turn on, so alhamdulillah, Namam gave me a ride here. So I'm starting a little late for that. Also, I want to apologize for not having class the last 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 3 weeks? 2 weeks, yeah, I had COVID. And so I was still positive last week. I wasn't negative until, I think, Tuesday. Then I went back to work on Thursday. It's been, 3 weeks now, but just want to stay on the safe side. The symptoms had stopped by last week, but I just wasn't comfortable unless I was negative and enough time was spent away. And it wasn't fun, so that was a conscious choice. Assalamu alaikum. How are you? Alhamdulillah, good. All right, chapter 6, fun chapter, let's get into it. 2 incidents we're going to cover today, we're going to cover with a lot of enjoyment. The first is, both when Khabib was younger. So now what's the premise behind it? Khabib begins this chapter by saying, oh, by the way, you know he's coming to America. He has a program in Michigan at Miftah Institute on the 25th of January. Any of you going? No, never mind. They're pretty expensive. But, ooh, those are cool socks. Those leather socks?
Yeah.
Really? Let me see.
No, well, like my grandpa just gave them to me. So
Yes, just walk over here. I just want to see it. Cool. Are they leather on the bottom? They lift it up? No? Okay, just checking. Oh, it's cool, man. So Khabib, he begins by saying, my father is everything to me. And we're going to go into what was everything to me. We're going to go into this idea of love languages between fathers and sons in particular. This is parents as well, because we have sisters who are listening as well. But specifically between fathers and sons because of the idea that Khabib is the son and his father is the father, obviously in this case. And he has a lot of respect for his mother. He even says that his love and reverence for her is more than the father. He's like, I know my father won't like me saying this. But he also, this is what our religion teaches us, and mashallah, he's a person of devotion. But one of the things I want us to recognize is that it's really important my wife's a therapist, and we talk sometimes about just different methods that are used for counseling. And she says that oftentimes we ask people to try to remember good memories of certain relationships. So for example, if a husband and wife are having a difficult time, they often ask, let's think back to the good times. And sometimes people say, well, there weren't any good times. And sometimes therapists, they say, you need to establish really good memories in the beginning, so later when things get difficult, and in all marriages things get a little difficult, then we're able to go back and access those memories. So Khabib, also with parents, sometimes when things go a little sour with parents and children, you should think back to yourself and think, okay, what were the good memories? And then to allow a person to know it wasn't all bad. So Khabib, he shares a couple of particular good memories he had. And he mentions sport, family, religion, study, and everything I tried to do as father said and how he liked it. And there's this deep relationship they had. And he mentions the reason was it was a thrill with a touch of love, friendship, respect, pride, and fear, the best mix of emotions. My main childhood memory of father was his indefatigable nature, and that's how I remember him from my youngest years. And for all of us who are going to eventually grow up to be parents, we should always remember that those early impressions are the most important. Those of us who are parents, we have to try to establish those impressions. So 2 stories he begins with. Number 1, he says that when he was younger, one day his father was out of the house. And he and his mother are home alone. And a person came knocking on the door. And so his mother asked, who is it? And there's a man's voice saying, open up. Now, his mom said, my husband's not home, and to come back later. But the stranger didn't leave. And he said he's from the electric company, and that he had come to cut the wires because we're not paying our electric bill. So mother told him that that's not the case, there's some mistake, and my husband will be home. But he didn't care. He climbed up electric pole to cut the electrical wires. Now, as he was doing that, Khabib's father returns. So Khabib, he runs over to his father and tells him that, look, this is what happened. So his father went to the pole and asked the technician what he was doing. The technician told him, climb the wires because you haven't paid your bill. Father said, that's not true. I have the receipt in the house. Now, if you haven't lived overseas, you won't understand this as much, because here you can miss a ComEd bill and pay it a month later, etc., and then it still continues. But overseas, it's pay per use. In fact, you have like units that you have like this electricity box, and you punch in your code, and then you swipe this card or the receipt number, and it puts in your units. Let's say it's 1,000 units. Now you use it till the units expire, then the electricity just shuts down. And you have to put more units in. There's a lot of pay-per-use policies all across the world. Here we have that as well, but they can't just cut electricity here. There's a lot of legalities that surround it. So the father said, look, I have the receipt. The guy didn't care. And the guy actually became very belligerent. And he began to tell his father that, that, you know, I don't care, etc. And he became very belligerent in his tone, and things got very elevated. And as that happened, Khabib's father grabbed him, and Khabib's walking from the window, and he sees father like get into it, and he takes him down, he gets on top of him, and he deals with him until finally the electrician, he's like, fine, I submit, I give up, you win, and he walks away and doesn't cut the wires. Now, I'm not trying to encourage violence. What I am saying is that in every relationship and responsibility, there's different components. For the male sitting here, one of the components of being a father and being a husband is to have physical strength and bravery and courage. And even courage doesn't mean lack of fear. In fact, courage is the presence of fear. If you had no courage, you would just be, numb and honestly very dumb. Courage means you see the situation, how bad it could be, and there's fear there, but you still say, I have to press on through it. So maybe Khabib's father is like, I don't want to get into this fight. Maybe he was bigger, etc. But he knew that they're going to wrongfully have electricity cut. Everyone's going to be affected. So he did what had to be done to convince the man, took him down, got on him, pretty much submitted him, and the man said, fine, you win, I lose. But especially for the future fathers over here, pay attention to every area of muru'ah, of futu'ah, of being a man. That includes your intelligence, that includes your deen, that includes your love and compassion, that includes your sensitivity, that includes your financial gain, and also includes your physical strength, and when to use it and when not to use it. And it had a lasting impression on Khabib. He remembers when my dad came, he was the one I had to rush to. He remembers his dad trying to calm the situation with his mouth and his tongue and bring everything back to normal. And he remembers the man was belligerent and was going to harm the family, then he had to take matters into his own hands. And so it showed a really nice balance for Khabib, and Khabib, his love for his father grew. The second incident was when he was a little older. Where is it? Oh, here it is. One day they had some work being done in the house. And so they had moved to Curaval, and when they moved there, they were living in this small trailer, and they were trying to build a home for the family. Because remember, they moved from the mountains into the farming area, and now they were establishing a life. And so in the small trailer they were living in, his mom noticed that all of her jewelry was gone. This was stuff that she was given as gifts and as mahar, as dowry when they got married. So she went and told her husband. And immediately, father noticed that the window of the trailer leading to the bedroom had been removed. So he realized that one of the workers who were building the house, they must have done this. And who can remove the window completely? So the father went and he looked. And he got all the workers. And he was extremely tough with them. And he doesn't highlight the details of how tough he was with them. But then he says, the next sentence, all the jewels were returned. And again, it comes down to this idea of having courage and bravery with intelligence in times when those situations call for it. Meaning, we don't resort to violence, but we also recognize that part of being the father of a household is to take the family's consideration and put it as a primary concern. He could have told his wife, don't worry about it, or you're making things up, or how do you know it was done, etc. But he also recognized that's not his right. His position is to defend her, especially when she's in need. And so put aside your own feelings at any given moment and defend the person. Sometimes we see people who are in position, what do? They immediately cast the suspicion upon the victim rather than the aggressor. And that's contrary to Maru'ah and Futu'ah. That's not how the Prophet ﷺ was. And so he mentioned that this episode confirmed me even more in the thought that it would be better not to enrage father or I would be in trouble. But basically what? He had love and respect for his father. Remember, the emotions that he mentions was not that he feared his father. The emotion was a touch of love, friendship, respect, pride, and fear. And then he said the best mix of emotions. It wasn't dominating with a stiff hand. It wasn't being a big pushover. It was providing a balance in all of those things such that you're able to give proper tarbiyah to whoever you're trying to aid. Tarbiyah meaning what? Raising them up. And even as friends and family, we have to do this sometimes. Sometimes you have to be lenient with your siblings. Sometimes you have to be a little tough with your siblings. And sometimes you have to defend your siblings. Sometimes you have to step away and let them defend for themselves. Why? Because that allows a person to grow. You have, for example, a younger sister. And she and her classmate, they both have a disagreement. For you to step in and to become like the aggressor is not going to help anyone out. But your younger sibling is being pushed around the playground by someone 3 years older. Then you step in. You don't say, oh, come on, you got to be tough now. There's time. You have to use your intelligence to see when that balance of emotion occurs. I'll give you an example. My wife last night told me that my daughter, she loves doing tumbling and like cartwheels and stuff. So even a couple months ago, she was doing one, like a cartwheel, and she kicked a bowl off the counter and it shattered everywhere. And my wife had made the bowl. And so my wife was really upset. And so my daughter feels really bad. And then one, she was doing a cartwheel and she kicked her brother in the face. And so she's just, it's getting too much. So I've been firm with her, that's it. No more of this stuff. No more, we're done with this. You have tumbling class, you tumble at home. You have to really watch what you're doing it. So my wife told me last night that, do you see Hamna's room? I said, no, I haven't seen it. She said, there's a hole in the wall. I'm like, well, what hole in the wall? And she said she did something and put a hole in the wall. So it was late at night. Kids were asleep. I'm not going to go look then. This morning I'd forgotten about it. My daughter, she said, Baba, you didn't come last night. I'm like, oh, I guess I forgot to, etc., something, whatever. And then so she said, there's a hole in my wall. I'm like, let me see this hole in your wall. And I saw it. I'm like, what happened? And she said, I was tumbling and I kicked a hole in the wall. I was like, I'm really unhappy right now. I'm really upset. But I guess I can't do anything now. Because my wife had already explained how upset she was and she felt really guilty. Now to go back and yell at someone who feels really bad and feels really guilty is not going to bring any benefit to the situation. It's not. And you have to temper your response. If it's always fear, eventually the child will not be afraid of you anymore or will be afraid of you so much, love cannot come back. If it's always forgiveness, the person will never learn accountability because they'll know, oh, it'll always be overlooked anyway. If it's always, what else is mentioned over here? Pride, then the child itself will recognize that, oh, I have to be proud too, because that's the only way you can make it through life. No, the Prophet ﷺ, he balanced his emotions in his display of everything, so the people who under him who learned from him would also be able to do the same. Okay, let's move on now. So those are two really enjoyable stories. Did I mention the backpack one to you guys yet? No. Okay, I just want to make sure I get confused with which group is where, so you guys are here. Now, his father used to love to play football, soccer. And he was like the captain of a team in their village. And when they would go out to play, they had like this duffel bag where they would carry like their extra shirts and like their towels and their water bottles. Now, one thing he would do for Khabib, who's only like 7, 8, 9 years old at this point, he would tell him that you're carrying this bag. And then he told him that when you carry it and it has all these things in it, and then he would tell him that when people ask for water, don't give it to them. Because they should know to bring water themselves. But so a couple things happen over here. Number one, he's teaching him how to teach people. If people come and say, oh, I'm so thirsty, I have water bottles, can I have one? And you give it, and they have one, can you give it? Then eventually they become in the habit of what? I'm not going to ever bring it because someone will always give it to me. And then that one day when no one has something there, they themselves are going to suffer. So you teach them early on that no, your responsibility is to bring your own sweat towel, your own extra t-shirt, your own extra water bottle. If someone forgets randomly one day, then that's different. But he was teaching Khabib Nurmagomedov or Nur Muhammad how to teach others when they're interacting. And the second thing that happens over here is that he entrusts them, he gives them responsibility. More often than not, with younger people, we always like say, oh, they're too little, I'll just take care of it for you. And I'm very guilty of this as well. The reality is that you have to teach them through example. You have to teach them through example. You can't just always teach them by expecting them to learn later. You know that at this particular point they have A, B, and C situation they have to get through. And the way you're going to teach them now is be responsible for it. So for example, you're going on a trip and the child, you tell them that you're responsible for packing all the board games, whatever. And if the child doesn't pack the board games, you can say, oh, you're never going to do this right, I'll do it, and you pack it. And they know what, no matter what, mom and dad will always be, then they'll take care of it. Or number two, you're going to pack the board games, and the child forgets, and you see they forgot. Now you go, and it's time for a pit stop on the road, and okay, let's take out the board games. Oh, I forgot to pack it. Oh, okay, well, this trip we're not going to have any games. So the person learns very clearly what? That you are responsible, and your responsibilities affect others. And this is something that Khabib's father did throughout his life. Even some of the farming exercises and the farming, what's the word I'm looking for? The farming responsibilities that he gave him were such that they had to make sure that they did A, B, and C on time. If not, the entire family would suffer. And so it gave him a sense of pride that he was responsible for something so big, but at the same time it taught him to be responsible and not to always coddle others. There's a couple other things that goes over here. I want to skip through a couple of these things. Okay, so one day, some of these soccer games got really intense. So one day, their team went, and they were going to the next round in the championship series against one of the villages from the mountains of Dagestan. Remember now, they're originally from the mountains of Dagestan themselves. So one of their opponent's players was really rude, and he's aggressive, and he spoke in a way, and he acted in a way that was considered very dirty. And as he was playing dirty with one of Khabib's teammates, or Khabib's father's teammates. So his father noticed this. So at this moment, he's noticing this, so he shouts something out to Khabib's uncle and to his younger brother to change clothes for the game. Now, why? His uncle, at that time, was a Sambo world and national champion. He said, I don't know how to play, and you know that, Manaf. His father's name is Abdul Manaf. So his father literally went wild and yelled at his uncle, so he had no choice. Like, put on your jersey. What are you doing? I told you put on your jersey. He said, fine. So he changed his clothes, he joined the game. And Khabib said, I understood his father was doing. He put his uncle in the position where that person who's playing dirty would have to play against him. So Khabib was watching this, and he's watching like, I know what's going to happen, And the person on the other side came, he started playing dirty with his uncle, started pushing him, elbowing him, kicking him. And his uncle doesn't know how to play soccer, but knows how to fight. He's a national and world Sambo champion. So the moment that happens, his uncle takes him down and just takes him out within 10 seconds. And then, some of the teammates jumped in and they began to fight as well. But what did Khabib's dad show right away? That this is a matter of pride. You have to defend those this person is being belligerent, they're being rude, they're being obstinate, they're crossing the line, they're doing all these things. You can't let that happen. Our player who's being hit over and over is a little weaker. So what did he do? He substituted him out. He brought the guy who doesn't know how to play. In hockey we call them enforcers. You guys, you're a bit of Canadian in you. Hockey enforcers, no? So hockey enforcers, those guys on the ice are like 6'4", 6'5", 250 pounds. They're not the most skilled players out there. I played hockey, but you can see my stature. I'm not a big hockey guy. Enforcers are those guys on your team who, if they're on the ice or they're on the rink, you can't do anything to someone else because that person's going to go chase you down and make you really remorseful and regretful for what you've done. So Khabib's dad, what he did was he was always defending everyone. And he's showing like, we're a family. This team is a family. One person can't overstep their bounds and do this and hurt someone else except that we respond back. And this was another thing. And what he mentions was that from match to match, from scuffle to scuffle, with undisguised enthusiasm, I relayed to my classmates how father had behaved. This is a matter of pride for me. And then they won the championship a couple times in 95 and 97. But the whole idea was how he looked out for everyone. He was building for, and look at Khabib today. He is a multi-millionaire, alhamdulillah. He lives in his same old village, didn't move to America. Are you going to that Khabib program? Possibly, yeah. I was thinking about there's no way I can leave work in time. So I was thinking about asking my boss for time off, but I don't know. I just had to take off all this COVID time, so we'll see. There's a way. Maybe we can jump in together and ride if I get off, inshallah. I have some friends from here who want to go. We can maybe jump in a van and go. Anyway, so now look. Look at Khabib today. He's very wealthy, mashallah, extremely wealthy. And what is he doing? He is making sure that, I was listening to an interview from Islam Makhachev, who's one of the top fighters now. He's going to be competing for a championship, I think, soon. Not sure all the details, but anyway. He was saying that Khabib, he pays for our entire camp, and he pays for the coaches, and he pays for our lodging, and our stay, and our food. He got his success. He can now take his wife and kids, maybe his mother as well, and just move to America, live in LA, and be comfortable. But what does he do? He moves back to Dagestan. He is spending on his community. He is running the gym his father used to run. He's coaching that gym as well. And then when they travel to train for the big matches, he pays for everything. What did his father teach him? We are one family. Not just blood. This community is one family, and we watch out for one another. And incidents like this, it's not random that he's including them in his autobiography, because that's what made him into who he is today. So these quote-unquote small things are not small. These incidents are incidents that will shape you and others around you for the rest of your lives. And look what he says. At the end of this chapter, he says, I closely followed father in everything he did, whether it was household activities, work, training, communication with relatives, and friends. His leadership qualities were always clear to me. Naturally, I tried to be like him. To the extent that when he would go running, he would watch when he would run. He saw his schedule, how demanding it was, and he tried to then embody it. And so he ends this, and there's a few of them I'm going to skip over, he ends this with a very nice sentence. He says, my brother Magomed, Muhammad, and I are sons of our father, Abdul Manaf ibn Maghadarov, meaning we are like him. And that's exactly what a lot of this book is about learning to be the best you can be so others can be mirrors of you. And then people will be mirrors of that person. And that's what our sunnah is. The Prophet ﷺ said, Al-mu'minu mir'atul mu'min. The believer is the mirror of the believer. And what is the sunnah? Our sunnah, قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَاتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ وَيَغْفِرْ لَكُمْ ذُنُوبَكُمُ اللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. Say that if you love Allah, follow me. Allah will love you. لَقَدْ كَانَ لَكُمْ فِي رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُسْوَةٌ حَسَنَةٌ. The best example. And so we look for the best people in our communities, and then those best people, we mirror them. Then when we reach a position, people mirror us. And then when people reach that position, they mirror their mentor, and it becomes a silsila or a sanad of mirroring until the end of time. Our issue is that we have stopped mirroring people of goodness, and we begin to mirror people who are not as good. And we take some of these social elites and influencers, and we try to embody what they embody, and in the end, everyone's mirroring someone else. I want everyone to know that everyone mirrors everyone. Meaning, I'm not going to mirror all of you. I'm going to mirror something from everyone I meet. And that's the interesting thing about fashion. Fashion, no one is unique in fashion. No one is original in fashion. Everyone does copy someone. Even these clothes, all my clothes, they're sewn. I don't buy clothes, they're sewn. but they're sewn based upon some other. So this one has no slit and has no collar. Maybe the one I wear tomorrow has a collar and has a slit. It's based off some other pattern that someone wore before. The pants I purchased from a store, they're mass produced. This coat was purchased from a store. It's mass produced. We're all copying someone. And the way we mix it together, that makes us unique, not original. So if we're going to copy someone, then we should copy the best. And if we're going to copy the best, namely when it comes to character, if we copy the best, then people will see us as being the best, and they'll copy us, and it'll be a profligation and propagation of good character and good qualities amongst the community. So I have to leave a little early, so I'm going to stop 2 minutes early, inshallah. Noman Pai and I have to leave, so I will see you guys next week, inshallah. Again, I apologize for the past couple of weeks, but I just didn't want to get anyone sick over here. Alhamdulillah, I apologize for my voice. I've been told by all my classes my voice has been going out. That's one thing that hasn't recovered yet. Wa akhiru da'wan, alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله